What if the words you speak today could bend the very fabric of reality? Picture a time when language wasn't just a tool for communication. It was a force of nature, a key to unlocking powers beyond our wildest dreams. Across the ancient world, from the sun-baked temples of Egypt to the mist-shrouded pyramids of the Maya, civilizations believed in the transformative power of spells and incantations. These weren't just words scribbled on parchment or carved into stone. They were living, breathing instruments of magic, capable of summoning storms, curing plagues, or even calling forth the spirits of the dead. This is the world we're about to step into, a world where the line between language and enchantment blurred into something extraordinary. Think about the last time you felt the weight of a single word, how a whispered promise or a shouted curse could change everything. Now multiply that power by thousands of years of belief, ritual, and untapped mystery. The spells we're exploring today weren't just folklore or superstition. They were the cutting-edge science of their time, the hidden knowledge guarded by priests, shamans, and scholars. These incantations were so potent that they were often buried with their wielders, sealed away in tombs to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. Some were etched onto amulets worn like armor against unseen dangers. Others were chanted in secret ceremonies, their true meanings lost to time until now. This journey isn't just about uncovering forgotten words. It's about rediscovering the minds and hearts of the people who believed in them. What drove an Egyptian priest to spend years memorizing the exact cadence of a spell to summon the gods? Why did a Mayan healer risk everything to preserve a chant that could mend broken bones? The answers lie in the shadows of history, waiting to be pieced together like fragments of a shattered mirror. As we delve into these ancient spells and hidden incantations, you'll begin to see patterns, echoes of humanity's endless quest to understand, to control, and to transcend the limits of our world. So let's begin where all great mysteries do, with a single word spoken into the darkness and the hope that something might answer back. The idea that words could command the elements or summon divine forces wasn't just poetic imagination, it was a cornerstone of ancient belief systems. Take the Babylonians, for instance, who inscribed their incantations on clay tablets with such care that even the shape of each symbol was thought to influence the spell's potency. These weren't random scribbles, they were meticulously crafted keys to unseen realms. A single mispronunciation or omitted syllable could mean the difference between a successful harvest and a devastating famine. The Celts, too, held their bards in awe, believing that a well-spoken verse could rally armies or curse enemies across great distances. Words weren't just sounds to them. They were arrows loosed into the world, carrying intentions that took root in reality. But what made these cultures so certain that language held such power? The answer lies in their understanding of the universe itself. Many ancient societies saw creation as an act of speech, a god speaking the world into existence, or a sacred chant weaving order from chaos. If the cosmos was born from vibration, then surely the right combination of sounds could bend its fabric. Egyptian priests, for example, practiced Heka, the art of sacred utterance, where every word was a thread in the tapestry of magic. They didn't just recite spells, they became conduits for divine energy, their voices merging with the rhythms of the Nile and the turning of the stars. And it wasn't just about the words themselves, it was how they were delivered. A whispered incantation under a new moon carried different weight than one shouted at dawn. The Norse rune-masters carved their spells into bone or wood, then stained them with ochre or blood to awaken the symbols. In India, Vedic mantras were passed down orally for millennia, their precise tonal vibrations believed to harmonize the body with the universe. These rituals weren't empty theater, they were technologies of belief refined over generations. So were these practices just elaborate placebos, or did they tap into something deeper? Modern science hints at intriguing parallels. Sound waves can shatter glass or soothe the mind. Studies show that spoken affirmations can rewire neural pathways. Maybe the ancients were onto something, not in the literal sense of summoning storms, but in recognizing language as a bridge between mind and matter. After all, isn't every invention, every revolution born first as a word spoken into the air? The difference is that for them, that word wasn't just a beginning, it was the spell itself already at work. Imagine holding a passport to eternity, not stamped by any earthly authority, but written in symbols of gold and ink, each word a safeguard against the unknown. That's what the Egyptian Book of the Dead was to those who entrusted their souls to its spells. Far from a single book, it was a customizable guide, tailored to the individual, filled with incantations to navigate the afterlife's treacherous terrain. Picture a nobleman's tomb, its walls alive with hieroglyphs shimmering under torchlight, each column of text a lifeline, a whispered promise that death was not an end but a doorway. One of the most profound rituals was the opening of the mouth ceremony. Imagine a priest, clad in leopard skin, touching a golden blade to the lips of a mummy, not to harm but to awaken. This spell restored the deceased's senses, allowing them to see, hear, and speak in the afterlife. Without it, the soul might wander eternally, trapped in a world of silence and shadows. The ritual wasn't just symbolic. It was a cosmic reboot, a way to ensure the dead could feast with the gods, taste the bread of eternity, and plead their case before Osiris himself. Then there's spell 125, the ultimate moral reckoning. Known as the negative confession, it required the deceased to stand before 42 divine judges and declare their purity, not with proof, but with words. I have not stolen, I have not lied, I have not caused tears. Each denial was a feather weighed against the heart on mad scales. But here's the twist, the spell wasn't just about truth-telling, it was a linguistic lifeline. By reciting the words perfectly, the soul could outwit demons, bypass traps, and reshape reality through sheer utterance. A single misstep, though, and Amit the Devourer awaited, jaws gaping. What's striking is how personal these spells were. A wealthy merchant might commission a papyrus with spells for safe passage through the 12 gates of the Jewat, while a farmer's family might paint simpler incantations on his coffin. The spells even accounted for practicalities like spell for not dying again, which ensured the resurrected wouldn't face a second death. But beneath the magic lay a profound philosophy, that words could rewrite fate, that morality was etched not just in actions but in syllables. Modern archaeologists still debate whether these spells worked in a supernatural sense, but in a way they did centuries later. We're still deciphering them, still feeling their pull. When a curator unrolls a papyrus today, the ink still glows, the vowels still hum with intention. Maybe that's the real magic, not commanding the afterlife, but ensuring that a name, a voice, a story would never truly fade. The Book of the Dead didn't just guide souls, it made them immortal. The Babylonians didn't just fear the dark, they wrote manuals for it. In the flickering lamplight of Mesopotamian temples, priests etched intricate spells onto clay tablets, each line a shield against the unseen. Take the Maklu series, a 7-tablet masterpiece of defensive magic. These weren't vague chants, they were legal arguments addressed to the gods, meticulously structured to dismantle curses like a prosecutor unraveling lies. A sorcerer's hex might slither through the night, but Maklu spells pinned it down with logic, calling on Shamash, the sun god, to act as judge and jury. Let the witch's tongue be tied like a gazelle's foot. One incantation demands proof that Babylonians saw words as both weapon and lockpick. Then there were the Sherpu rituals, a kind of spiritual detox for the soul. Imagine standing barefoot on a rooftop at midnight, holding a lump of tamarisk wood while a priest recited 49 lines of purification. Each sin, whether a lie told or a boundary stone moved, was transferred into the wood before it burned to ash. But the real genius lay in the details. The charcoal had to be from a specific tree, the fire lit with precise timing. This wasn't superstition. It was spiritual engineering, using ritual like a scalpel to cut away invisible corruption. What's fascinating is how these spells mirrored Babylonian society itself. Just as their laws held people accountable, an eye for an eye, their magic held demons to the same standard. An exorcism might begin with a formal accusation. You, demon who causes seizures, you violated Clause 3 of the cosmic order. Even evil spirits got their day in court. The god Marduk wasn't just invoked as a destroyer. He played defense attorney, cross-examining supernatural troublemakers before banishing them to the underworld. Modern minds might dismiss this as primitive fear-mongering, but consider the parallels. When we say, speak your truth or name your demons, we're channeling the same instinct that articulation disarms power. Science now shows how vocalizing fears reduces their grip on the brain. Maybe the Babylonians were onto something deeper. That language doesn't just describe reality, it reshapes it. Their clay tablets weren't just relics, they were battle plans for a war waged with syllables, where victory meant one more dawn without shadows whispering your name. The Vikings didn't just carve runes, they summoned storms with them. Picture a Norse warrior tracing the angular lines of the Alges rune onto his spear before battle, not as decoration, but as a plea to the gods for protection. These symbols weren't mere letters, they were fragments of the cosmos itself, gifted to humanity after Odin hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear. His sacrifice wasn't just about gaining knowledge, it was about harnessing the primal power of creation, one rune at a time. Take the Aegis-Jalma or Helm of Ore, a labyrinth of interlocking runes often scratched onto foreheads or weapons. Warriors believed this symbol could paralyze enemies with terror, turning the tide of battle before a single sword was swung. But the magic wasn't in the design alone, it was in the act of carving. Each stroke of the knife was a whispered pact with the unseen, a way to bend fate like a blacksmith bending iron. Even love spells followed this logic. The Berkana rune, shaped like a budding branch, was etched onto bedposts or worn as amulets to invite fertility, its curves echoing the rhythms of growth and renewal. Then there were the runestone's monuments as much as messages. Some, like the Björketorp stone in Sweden, bore warnings so potent they're still legible 15 centuries later. I foresee perdition for the one who breaks this monument. Others, like the Rökstone, wove riddles into their inscriptions, as if the words themselves were spells to unlock hidden knowledge. Travelers would touch these stones for blessings, while thieves avoided them like plague, fearing curses that could unravel their lives thread by thread. What made these symbols so potent in the Norse mind? It all came down to the idea of Orlog, the web of destiny woven by the Norns. Runes weren't just tools, they were needles capable of rethreading that web. A farmer might carve Fehu onto his plow to ensure a rich harvest, trusting that the rune's connection to cattle and wealth would seep into the soil. A grieving mother might inscribe daggers on a memorial, its dawn-like shape a promise that death was just another horizon. Modern linguists debate whether runes held intrinsic power or simply focused the user's intent. But archaeology offers clues. Amulets found in graves often show wear from constant handling, their edges smoothed by fingers seeking comfort. Maybe the real magic lay in the belief that symbols could bridge the gap between human hands and divine will, that a few lines carved in oak or stone could make the unseen world lean closer just for a moment. To the Maya, blood wasn't just life, it was currency, a sacred ink to sign contracts with the gods. Imagine a priest standing atop a pyramid at dawn, his tongue pierced by a stingray spine, droplets of blood spattering onto bark paper like crimson stars. This wasn't suffering, it was an invitation, a way to open the door between worlds. The Popol Vuh, their sacred text, describes creation itself as a dialogue between gods and bloodletting, a pact sealed in scarlet. When drought parched the land, rulers like Lady Zok of Yaxchilan would thread ropes of thorns through their tongues, chanting spells to summon rain from the throats of serpents. Each syllable was timed to the movement of Venus, their words woven into the fabric of the cosmos. But why blood? The Maya saw it as Siechulul, the essence of vitality, a thread connecting human bodies to celestial forces. A single drop could power a spell for 3 reasons. It carried memory, it anchored intention, and most crucially, it demanded reciprocity. The gods had given their own blood to create humanity. Now it was humanity's turn to feed the cycle. Rituals often involved hallucinogens like balshay, a honey-infused brew that blurred the veil between realms. A priest might chew ololuqui seeds, his visions guiding the chant's rhythm as he navigated the Zabalbabi, the road to the underworld. These weren't random trips, they were precision journeys, with each verse acting as a landmark in the spirit world. The Chilam Balam texts reveal how deeply astronomy shaped these incantations. A spell to bless crops might be recited only when the Pleiades aligned with the zenith, its power tied to the Milky Way's white road. Warriors carried amulets inscribed with ichtglyphs, the wind symbol believing these could harness the tempests described in their star charts. Even their calendar, the Tzolk'in, was a kind of spellbook. Certain days were Kayuhol, inherently sacred, and words spoken then carried extra weight. A healing chant on Ahau Day, for instance, might draw power from the sun's zenith energy. What's startling is how these practices echo modern science. We now know blood contains stem cells, that psilocybin can rewire neural pathways. Could the Maya have sensed these truths intuitively? Their spells weren't just superstition, they were experiments in resonance, attempts to sync human vibration with planetary cycles. When a shaman chanted over a bowl of Sakha, the sacred white water, he wasn't just praying, he was tuning, adjusting his voice until the universe hummed back. The real lesson here isn't about magic, it's about perception. The Maya didn't separate science from spirit. They saw them as one system, a dance of measurable stars and immeasurable forces. Their spells remind us that language isn't just about meaning. It's about alignment, about finding the frequency where words stop being sounds and start shaping reality. Even now, in the ruins of Palenque, if you press your ear to the stones at dusk, some swear they still hear the whispers of those chants, not as echoes, but as living threads in an unbroken conversation with the sky. Buried beneath the sands of Egypt, wrapped in the tongues of half a dozen cultures, the Greek magical papyri whisper secrets of a world where magic knew no borders. These weren't just spells, they were conversations, arguments between gods and traditions, scribbled onto fragile papyrus by hands that moved between temples and marketplaces. Picture a Greek merchant in Alexandria, his fingers stained with ink as he copies an Egyptian curse, tweaks it with a Hebrew name of power, and seals it with an invocation to Hermes. This was magic in the melting pot, where every incantation was a negotiation between worlds, take the Mithra's liturgy, a cosmic roadmap etched in ink. Unlike simpler love charms or curses, this spell was a full-blown ascent to the heavens, a step-by-step guide to breaking free of the body and riding the sun's chariot through 7 celestial gates. The practitioner would breathe in rhythm with sacred vowels alpha, epsilon, eta, each sound vibrating at a frequency believed to dissolve mortal limits. But here's the twist: the text name drops Persian Mithras, Egyptian Ra, and Greek Apollo in the same breath. It wasn't confusion, it was alchemy, the deliberate fusion of divine forces to amplify the spell's reach. Then there's the Sword of Dardanos, a spell so potent it blurred the line between prayer and threat. Named after a mythical Trojan ancestor, it didn't just ask spirits for help, it commanded them, binding them with a web of Greek hexameter, Egyptian hieroglyphic cipher, and Hebrew angelic names. One line reads, "By the 7 locks of the underworld I compel you," a phrase that would feel at home in a Babylonian exorcism or a Jewish Kabbalistic text. This was magic as diplomacy, wielding cultural symbols like master keys to unlock unseen doors. Why did this hybrid approach flourish? Alexandria was the Silicon Valley of its day, a crossroads where Egyptian priests rubbed shoulders with Greek philosophers, Jewish mystics, and Roman soldiers. When plague struck, no one cared if the healing chant came from a temple of Isis or a synagogue, as long as it worked. The papyri reflect this pragmatism. A love spell might invoke Aphrodite alongside the Egyptian Bess, then add a dash of Christian amen for good measure. It wasn't heresy, it was hedging your bets. Modern scholars debate whether these spells were acts of devotion or early experiments in psychology. The Mithra's liturgy, for instance, reads like an ancient mindfulness exercise: controlled breathing, visualization, mantra-like repetition, techniques we now know can alter consciousness. And the sword, its layered languages might have acted as a mental lockpick, bypassing the practitioner's own doubts by appealing to every corner of their multicultural psyche. The real magic here wasn't in any single tradition, it was in the spaces between them. These papyri prove that when cultures collide, even the gods learn new languages. A spell that begins with Hail, Thoth, and ends with Holy, 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 isn't just a ritual, it's a testament to humanity's endless hunger to reach beyond what any one world can offer. And perhaps that's the most potent incantation of all, the belief that power grows when shared, that the right words, no matter their origin, can still open doors we've forgotten exist. To the Celts, a forest wasn't just a collection of trees, it was a library, each trunk a spine holding volumes of wisdom written in bark and leaf. The ogham script, with its stark lines and notches, wasn't merely an alphabet, it was a key to unlocking the voices of the oaks, ashes, and hawthorns. Each symbol or feather corresponded to a specific tree, and to carve it was to tap into that tree's essence. Need courage before battle. A warrior might trace the Dur rune, the mark of the oak, onto his shield, invoking the tree's unyielding strength. Seeking clarity, the sail of the willow, with its ties to intuition, might be whispered over a cup of moonlit water. This wasn't metaphor, it was a direct line to what the Celts called Daoist, the pulse of magic woven through the natural world. The bards took this further, mastering chants known as druidic cantrips. Picture a healer kneeling beside a wounded warrior, fingers pressed to birch bark as she recites a luabhit, a healing incantation timed to the rhythm of the patient's breath. The words themselves were secondary, it was the cadence that mattered, the way the syllables mimicked the rustling of leaves or the rush of a stream. Some chants, like the Atlantean storm call, could allegedly summon winds by harmonizing with the pitch of thunder. A bard might spend years learning just one of these, their training less about memorization and more about attunement, listening until the boundary between human voice and forest whisper dissolved. But not all ogham magic was benevolent. The glom Dyson was a bard's curse so potent it could wither crops or blight a king's reputation with a single satirical verse. These weren't mere insults, they were linguistic scalpels designed to sever a person from their firina, their personal truth. A well-aimed glom Dyson could turn a hero into a laughingstock, his deeds unraveling like rotten thread. The power lay in the bard's ability to expose hypocrisy, to weaponize rhyme and meter until the target's own community echoed the curse. Centuries later, the commoner Gaelica preserved Scottish Gaelic incantations that echoed these traditions. A scion for protection might weave together references to rowan trees, saintly relics, and the phases of the moon, proof that the old beliefs never truly faded, just adapted. A fisherman's chant to calm waves would name each part of his boat as if it were a living ally. Bless the prow that parts the tide, bless the mast that holds the sky. These weren't prayers in the passive sense, they were collaborations, a dialogue between human and horizon. So why did the Celts see nature as a spellbook? Because they understood something modern life often forgets. Language isn't confined to human mouths. The creak of a branch, the pattern of bird flight, the way fog clings to hills, these were all dialects in a grander conversation. To them, magic wasn't about defying nature, it was about finally speaking its language. When a druid chanted over a sacred grove, they weren't commanding the trees. They were asking, listening, and sometimes, if the wind was right, being answered. Imagine scratching your enemy's name into cold lead, then folding it tight and tossing it into a grave, not as an act of madness, but as a calculated strike in the shadows. The Romans called these depictions cursed tablets, so common they've been found from Britain to Egypt, each one a snapshot of raw human emotion preserved in metal. Unlike the grand spells of Egypt or the cosmic chants of the Maya, these were cheap, quick, and brutally personal. A jilted lover might pay a scribe to etch a spell binding their rival's tongue, while a merchant furious over stolen goods could nail a tablet to a temple wall, calling on Pluto to drag the thief screaming into the underworld. The process was alarmingly methodical. First, the curse writer would take a thin sheet of lead, often recycled from plumbing pipes, and scratch the victim's name backward or in spirals, a way to twist their fate. Then came the invocation. I curse Trescia Maria and her life, her mind, her memory, her liver and her lungs. Some tablets even included doll-like lead figurines, pierced with nails in the spots where the cursor wanted pain to strike. The most chilling were the competitive curses aimed at charioteers or gladiators. Found beneath Rome's Circus Maximus, one tablet begs the gods to bind the hands and feet of the green team's horses, blind their eyes and turn their legs to stone. This wasn't just superstition, it was psychological warfare, a way to tip fate's scales before the races even began. But why lead? The answer lies in Roman beliefs about the underworld. Lead was sacred to Saturn, god of time and decay, and its heaviness symbolized the weight of the curse itself. Burying it near springs, graves, or crossroads places considered gateways to the divine was like dropping a letter into hell's mailbox. Archaeologists have even found tablets with tiny holes, as if to vent the curse's malice into the spirit world. What's fascinating isn't just the cruelty, but the legalistic tone of these curses. Many read like courtroom petitions addressing gods as judges. Just as this lead is cold and worthless, so too shall be Valerius's heart. Some even included escape clauses, promising offerings if the gods delivered suffering by a certain date. This reveals a society where law and magic weren't opposites. They were tools used in tandem. If the courts failed you, why not subpoena the gods? The sheer variety of curses paints a vivid picture of Roman anxieties. A slave might curse a cruel master, a gambler his lucky rival, or a poet a critic who panned his work. One tablet from Bath, England, targets a thief who stole a cloak. May he who stole my hooded cloak drown in his own blood. The specificity is striking, no vague ill wishes, just precise, imaginative suffering. Modern eyes might dismiss these as the work of bitter minds, but consider this. When we mutter, "I hope they get what's coming to them," or post scathing online reviews, are we so different? The depictions remind us that malice has always sought an outlet, and language, whether etched in lead or tapped on screens, remains one of humanity's sharpest weapons. The tablets may be silent now, but their whispers still echo. Be careful what you carve into the universe. It might just listen. In the quiet before dawn, when the first light barely touches the Ganges, a Brahmin priest might begin the Gayatri mantra, not just reciting words, but shaping reality itself. Each syllable of this ancient hymn is a carefully tuned vibration, designed to align human breath with the cosmic rhythm of the sun's journey across the sky. The Rigveda calls this the thread that stitches earth to heaven, a sonic bridge built from 24 precise syllables. To the Vedic seers, sound wasn't just a tool, it was the raw material of existence. The universe began with Om, the primordial hum that still pulses through every mantra like a heartbeat. What made these chants so potent? It all came down to Shabda, the concept that sound carries inherent power. Vedic priests spent years mastering pronunciation because a single mispronounced syllable could turn a healing mantra into a meaningless noise. Take the Agnihotra ritual, where priests chant to summon fire, not by rubbing sticks, but by vibrating the Swaha mantra at a frequency believed to ignite flames from sheer resonance. Modern experiments have shown that certain Sanskrit vowels, when chanted at specific pitches, can actually disturb flame patterns, hinting that the ancients may have stumbled onto acoustic science long before microscopes or spectrometers. But the real magic lay in the layers. The Gayatri mantra, for instance, works on 3 levels: Vaikari, the spoken word; Madhyama, the mental vibration; and Para, the unspoken essence felt in the bones. Chanting it wasn't about volume, it was about hitting the exact frequency where human voice and cosmic hum merged. Temples were built with this in mind, their pillars designed to amplify certain mantras, turning stone into a tuning fork for divinity. Then there's the tantric tradition, where single bija syllables like lam or vam act as keys to unlock hidden energies within the body. Unlike Vedic hymns, these weren't prayers but catalysts, the spiritual equivalent of striking a match. The Kundalini awakening rituals used bija mantras to send vibrations snaking up the spine, each syllable corresponding to a chakra: Om for the crown, Yam for the heart, Ram for the solar plexus. Practitioners reported heat, light, even levitation phenomena. Modern neuroscience links to vibrational stimulation of the vagus nerve. Science is now catching up to what the rishis knew millennia ago. Cymatics reveals how sound shapes matter, sand grains dancing into sacred geometries when exposed to specific frequencies. Studies show Gregorian chants and Vedic mantras both induce theta brainwaves, the state linked to deep meditation. The difference: the Vedas mapped these effects with eerie precision, assigning mantras to heal organs: Aim for the brain, shield warriors, Atrim for protection, or even altar weather, Varuna for rain. Perhaps the deepest lesson lies in the silence between chants, the pause where the echo lingers, neither word nor void. That's where the real transformation happens, not in the mantra itself, but in how it tunes the listener to hear the universe singing back. When a sadhu chants Om today, he's not just making noise, he's joining a conversation that began when stars first learned to hum. In the mist-shrouded mountains of ancient China, A Daoist priest might spend years mastering the art of writing without ink, his brushstrokes tracing invisible currents of energy onto parchment. These weren't mere symbols, they were lightning captured on paper, a language so potent it could split the sky or silence demons with a single stroke. The cloud script, as it was called, resembled swirling storm patterns or the veins of a dragon's wing. Each curve and jagged line a conduit for celestial power. To the untrained eye, it looked like abstract art. To a Daoist initiate, it was a direct line to the thunder gods. At the heart of this practice lay the thunder code, a talisman so revered that its activation could mean the difference between a bountiful harvest and a village swallowed by floods. The ritual was precise. The priest would purify himself for days, fasting and chanting until his mind became a still pond. Then, at the exact moment lightning split the horizon, he'd dip his brush into cinnabar ink, a mineral linked to immortality, and transcribe the spell in one unbroken motion. The talisman's power wasn't just in the symbols, it was in the timing, the pressure of the brush, even the direction of the strokes. Some were worn as amulets, their energy seeping into the wearer's aura. Others were burned, the rising smoke carrying their command straight to the heavens. One surviving text describes a talisman that, when ignited, could summon 12 thunder generals to strike down the wicked without harming a single blade of grass. But how could ink on paper wield such force? The answer lies in Taoism's view of the cosmos. Reality was seen as a tapestry of Kai vital energy, and the right brushstroke could knot or unknot its threads. Fulu magic, the art of talismanic writing, treated characters as nets to trap malevolent spirits. A priest might write the word mountain in a specific style to pin a demon in place, or sketch the symbol for water in reverse to dry up a plague-bearing river. The most powerful talismans layered multiple scripts: celestial script for the gods, cloud script for weather, and demon sealing script for exorcisms, all on one parchment. The training to create these was grueling. Apprentices practiced for decades, learning to channel Kai through their arms and into the brush. A single hesitation could render the talisman useless, or worse, attract chaotic forces. Legends tell of priests who, after a moment of doubt, found their talismans sparking uncontrollably or their ink turning to blood. Mastery required more than skill. It demanded absolute unity of intention, action, and cosmic alignment. Modern scholars have found eerie parallels between these practices and quantum physics. The idea that observation affects reality, a cornerstone of quantum theory, mirrors the Daoist belief that a focused mind can shape energy. And those swirling cloud script symbols, they bear a striking resemblance to fractal patterns found in weather systems and neural networks. Perhaps the priests weren't just imagining connections, they were intuiting a deeper order, one we're only now beginning to map. What survives today isn't just museum pieces or fading scrolls. In rural temples, you might still find elders writing food talismans for protection or healing, their hands moving with the same precision as their ancestors. The paper may be modern, the ink store-bought, but the belief remains that words, when woven with intent, can stitch together the seen and unseen worlds. And sometimes, if you stand in the right valley during a summer storm, you might swear you hear the distant echo of a priest's chant. Or is it just thunder rolling down from the peaks like laughter from the gods? When the first enslaved Africans were shackled aboard ships bound for the Americas, they carried more than just their bodies across the ocean. They smuggled entire cosmologies in the cadence of their whispers. Among the Yoruba people, the Odu Ifa verses weren't just poetry. They were living maps of destiny, recited by Babalawoes who could decipher the universe's secrets through patterns of cowrie shells. Imagine a woman, wrists bound, silently repeating an ogham incantation to the god of iron, praying the chains would shatter like brittle wood. By the time her feet touched Haitian soil, those words had mutated into something new, a Piwen chant, shorter but just as fierce, passed hand to hand like a blade wrapped in cloth. This was survival alchemy. In Louisiana, a root worker might blend Spanish moss, gunpowder, and Psalm 23 into gopher dust, sprinkling it where an overseer would walk. The ingredients were local, but the intention was pure Yoruba, a way to turn the land itself against oppressors. Van oil, used even today to cleanse bad luck, traces its lineage to West African herbal knowledge. Its lemongrass and verbena swapped for native plants when the old ones couldn't be found. Every bottle holds a coded rebellion, the belief that no shackles could sever the bond between word, plant, and spirit. The brilliance of these adaptations lies in their camouflage. Catholic saints became stand-ins for Orisha's St. Peter for Ogun, the Virgin Mary for Yamoja, allowing rituals to hide in plain sight. A slave singing Hail Mary might actually be calling down Oshun's rivers to drown injustice. In Brazil, macumba spells woven into laundry soap or coffee grounds let magic masquerade as mundane labor. Even children's jump rope rhymes in the Carolinas carried fragments of Bakongo Nkisi charms, their power tucked between childish laughter. But was this just cultural preservation or something sharper? Consider the conjure bags buried beneath plantation doorsteps, filled with rusty nails, graveyard dirt, and handwritten curses. Or the flying spells whispered in the great dismal swamp, promising escape routes only spirits could see. These weren't passive prayers, they were spiritual guerrilla warfare, turning the master's own tools against him. A broken plow might be blamed on bad luck, but the enslaved knew the truth. Their words had teeth. Modern hoodoo and vodou still pulse with this resilience. When a practitioner lights a red candle for love or pins a name to a nation's sack, they're not just following tradition, they're speaking in a tongue that refused to die. The spells may wear new names now, but the current beneath them is the same. A river of ink and anger and unbroken will, flowing from Ife to Charleston, from Benin to Brooklyn. Every incantation is a rope thrown back through time, tugging at the wrists of those who first whispered them into the dark. Beneath the flickering candlelight of a medieval workshop, a hand trembles as it traces a circle in goat's blood, not out of madness but precision. The Key of Solomon demanded nothing less for summoning angels. This wasn't some backstreet hex. It was a meticulous science where one mistranslated Latin syllable could turn a divine invocation into a death sentence. Grimoires like these were the encrypted hard drives of their day, storing spells that promised everything from invisibility to boundless wealth. But their real power lay in their paradox. Written by the pious to control demons, yet condemned by the church as heresy the moment they slipped into the hands of midwives and hedge wizards. Take the sworn Book of Honorius, a text so dangerous it began with a warning. He who reads this without purification shall die. Its pages detailed how to bind spirits using geometric sigils, not random scribbles, but precise angles believed to mirror celestial architecture. A 15th century cunning woman might copy just one of these sigils onto parchment, tucking it into a client's mattress to cure fever. But if caught, that scrap of paper became proof of a pact with Satan. The irony, many grimoires borrowed heavily from church liturgy. The Enchiridion of Pope Leo Roman III repurposed psalms as protective charms, blurring the line between piety and witchcraft with every Amen. Then there were the barbarous names, strings of nonsense words like Aglanabath or Zazines that scholars now believe were garbled remnants of ancient languages. To the medieval mind, their very obscurity made them potent. A spell in the black pullet instructed readers to whisper these names while burying a hen's egg under a full moon, claiming it would hatch into a golden key to hidden treasures. Was it superstition? Perhaps, but consider the context. In an era where the Black Death could erase entire villages overnight, people clung to any system that promised control over chaos. The persecution wasn't just about fear, it was about power. When Johannes Hartlib, physician to the Duke of Bavaria, wrote that grimoires turn men from God's light, he wasn't exaggerating their magic, he was terrified of their accessibility. A peasant with a stolen grimorium verum could theoretically command the same spirits as a bishop. That threat upended the social order. Trial records from Normandy reveal how accusations often centered on literacy itself. Simply owning a book with strange symbols could seal your fate. Yet the grimoires refused to die. They migrated into alchemy manuals, herbalist journals, even children's rhymes. A hex sign painted on a barn door or a Hail Mary backwards might lack the elaborate ritual of the Key of Solomon, but the principle remained. Words were weapons and parchment was armor. Modern witches still debate whether these spells ever worked as written, but their true legacy isn't in summoning demons, it's in proving that knowledge, once unleashed, can't be unlearned. Even now, when a novice Wiccan traces a pentagram or whispers an old Latin phrase, they're touching a thread that stretches back to those candlelit workshops, where the real magic was never the ink on the page, but the audacity to believe ordinary hands could hold the extraordinary. Alchemists didn't write in code to hide their secrets, they wrote in code because some truths couldn't survive translation. The emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, a single slab of green stone said to hold the universe's greatest mysteries, begins with a line that's baffled scholars for centuries. That which is above is like to that which is below, and that which is below is like to that which is above. On the surface, it sounds like poetic symmetry, but to an alchemist, this was a technical manual. The words weren't just instructions, they were mirrors, designed to reflect the reader's own understanding back at them. A novice might see a call for balance between heaven and earth. An initiate would recognize a recipe for turning lead into gold, not as literal metallurgy, but as a map for transforming the soul. This was the essence of the language of birds, a mythical tongue whispered to be spoken by angels and understood by sages. Medieval alchemists claimed it wasn't a language at all, but a mode of perception, a way to hear the hidden music in rustling leaves, the geometry in a falcon's flight, or the chemical formulas hidden in nursery rhymes. The green language, as it was sometimes called, turned everything into allegory. A rose in a text wasn't just a flower. Its 5 petals symbolized the 5 elements, its thorns the dangers of untamed knowledge. Even the colors in illuminated manuscripts held meaning: gold ink for solar energy, scarlet for the philosopher's stone at its moment of transformation. But why such secrecy? Because alchemy wasn't just about chemistry, it was about power. In an age when the church could burn you for heresy and kings hoarded knowledge like treasure, encoding your work was survival. The 12 Keys of Basil Valentine, a foundational alchemical text, described dissolving a king in acid, except the king was gold ore, and the acid was antimony sulfide. To the uninitiated, it sounded like regicide. To an alchemist, it was a precise metallurgical process. The real magic lay in the dual meanings. A recipe for purifying metals could also be read as a guide to purifying the self, with impurities symbolizing vice and the furnace representing trials of the spirit. The most tantalizing cipher of all might be the Voynich manuscript, a book written entirely in an unknown script, brimming with illustrations of plants that don't exist and celestial charts that defy medieval astronomy. Some say it's an elaborate hoax, others believe it's the ultimate alchemical text. its bizarre glyphs encoding the language of birds itself. Modern codebreakers, including World War II cryptographers, have failed to crack it. But perhaps that's the point. Alchemy was never meant to be solved like a crossword puzzle. It was meant to be lived, a lifelong dialogue between the seeker and the symbols. What's striking is how these ciphers echo modern science. Quantum physics speaks in equally cryptic metaphors, spooky action at a distance, parallel universes because some truth resist plain language. The Emerald Tablet's famous line even mirrors the holographic principle in theoretical physics, where information on a boundary, like a two-dimensional surface, encodes a three-dimensional reality. Maybe the alchemists weren't just mystics. Maybe they were intuiting that the deepest laws of nature can't be spoken, only glimpsed through the cracks of riddles. So were these codes mere puzzles? In the end, it doesn't matter. Their power wasn't in revealing answers, but in teaching how to ask better questions. When an alchemist decoded the language of birds, they weren't just reading, they were learning to listen, to hear the universe whispering back in the rustle of pages, the crackle of the crucible, the silent spaces between stars. And sometimes that's the most potent spell of all. The Navajo night air hums with something deeper than darkness. It carries the weight of words woven into song, each note a thread stitching the world back together. The night chant, or yebachai, isn't just a ceremony. It's a 9-day symphony of healing where every verse, every drumbeat is a prescription for harmony. Picture a medicine man painting a patient's body with corn pollen, his voice rising and falling in precise intervals, tracing the constellations of illness back to their source. The songs don't just describe healing, they enact it, their vibrations realigning the body like a tuning fork struck against the earth's own frequency. A verse for the lungs might mimic the rush of wind through canyon walls, while a chant for the heart echoes the steady pulse of a river. But the true power lies in the pauses, the moments of silence between stanzas where the world holds its breath, allowing the healing to take root. For the Lakota, the Heyoka rituals turn this logic inside out. Here, the healers are the sacred clowns, the ones who walk backward, speak in riddles, and laugh during funerals. Their songs sound like chaos-cracked voices, disjointed rhythms, but this dissonance is deliberate. A Heyoka might sing a storm into existence by howling off-key, or cure a fever by refusing to speak at all. Their power comes from inversion, from breaking the rules so thoroughly that reality has no choice but to reset. When drought parched the plains, a Heyoka wouldn't chant for rain. He'd pretend to drown in dust, his exaggerated gasps forcing the universe to correct the imbalance with a deluge. Silence in these traditions isn't emptiness, it's the loom on which sound is woven. The Apache gone dancers wear bells but step in perfect quiet between beats, their stillness amplifying the resonance of each chime. A Pueblo rainmaker might spend days in mute meditation before singing, because the potency of a spell depends as much on what's withheld as what's uttered. This mirrors the Navajo concept of Hajoa, the beauty of balanced existence. Just as a basket's strength lies in the spaces between its fibers, a healing chant's power blooms in the silence framing its words. Modern science is beginning to catch up. Studies on brainwave entrainment show that rhythmic chanting can synchronize neural activity, while the placebo effect demonstrates how belief cultivated through ritual can trigger tangible healing. But these traditions offer something deeper, a reminder that language isn't just about communication. It's about communion with the land, with the unseen, with the parts of ourselves that only remember how to listen when the singing stops. When a Lakota elder says the Heyoka's songs unbreak the world, they're not speaking metaphorically. They're describing a technology of renewal, one that works not in spite of its contradictions, but because of them. The next time you hear thunder laugh or feel the hush between cricket songs, you might just catch the echo of an ancient truth. Sometimes the most powerful spell is the one you don't say aloud. The Kabbalists believed that the true name of God wasn't just a word, it was a living current of energy, a vibration so potent it could reshape reality itself. Hidden within the book of Exodus, in a passage describing the parting of the Red Sea, lies what mystics call the Shem HaMephorash, the 72 names of God. These weren't arbitrary titles, they were derived by slicing the Hebrew text of Exodus 14, verses 19 through 21, into 72 three-letter sequences. Each triplet was thought to hold a fragment of divine power, a key to unlocking everything from healing to prophecy. But here's the catch, these names weren't meant to be spoken aloud. To utter them carelessly was to risk unraveling the very fabric of creation. Consider the meticulous process behind their use. A Kabbalist preparing to invoke these names would first immerse in a mikveh, a ritual bath purifying body and soul. Then, wearing white linen, a fabric believed to repel impurity, they'd inscribe the names onto parchment using special ink mixed with traces of gold. The letters had to be perfect. A single smudged stroke could distort the name's energy, turning a blessing into a curse. Some amulets layered these names with symbols from the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, which taught that the universe was forged through Hebrew letters. Worn around the neck or hidden in door frames, these amulets weren't just decorations, they were spiritual circuit breakers, designed to channel divine energy without overloading the wielder. But why such caution? Ancient texts warn of the Klippot, shell-like forces of chaos that cling to misused divine names like rot to spoiled fruit. A mispronunciation might attract these entities, bringing madness or worse. The Zohar, Kabbalah's foundational text, tells of a rabbi who accidentally reversed 2 letters while chanting only to watch his shadow twist into something not his own. Another legend speaks of a scribe whose hand trembled while writing a name, his error summoning a whirlwind that shattered every window in his village. These weren't just ghost stories, they were warnings about the volatile nature of sacred language. Yet the risks didn't deter practitioners. The medieval sage Abraham Abulafia developed a whole system of letter permutation, where disciples would chant divine names while swaying, breathing rhythmically, even holding their breath, all to align their bodies with the vibrations of the letters. Some sought visions, others, like the Baal Shem Tov, founder of Hasidism, used the names to heal the sick. His followers told of a child revived from fever when he whispered a name over a cup of water, but only after days of fasting to ensure his intentions were pure. Modern linguists might dismiss this as superstition, but consider the parallels. Hebrew, like ancient Egyptian or Sanskrit, is an abjad language. Its consonants form the skeletal structure of words, while vowels act as the breath giving them life. Kabbalists argued that divine names were all consonants because vowels represented the human element, the part of speech that could never fully grasp the infinite. Even today, observant Jews write GD instead of God, a nod to the unbridgeable gap between human language and the divine. What endures isn't just the mystery of these names, but the philosophy behind them, that words aren't just sounds or symbols, but living forces. When a Kabbalist traced those 72 names, they weren't asking for favors, they were attempting to harmonize with the universe's hidden syntax. And perhaps that's the real miracle, not controlling the divine, but recognizing that some truths are too vast to be spoken, only sensed in the silence between letters. Plato's tale of Atlantis wasn't just about a lost city, it was a warning about power unchecked. According to his dialogues, the Atlanteans didn't just build towering structures of orichalcum, they wielded forces that blurred the line between magic and machinery. Their legendary fire crystals, described as conduits for celestial energy, sound less like myth and more like advanced technology lost to time. Imagine standing stones humming with unseen power, their facets capturing and amplifying sunlight until they could melt rock or heal wounds with a single beam. These weren't just decorative gems. If the stories hold even a grain of truth, they were the heart of Atlantean spellcraft, a fusion of vibration, geometry, and energy we might now call resonant frequency or directed energy. The most intriguing clues come from esoteric traditions that claim Atlantis mastered word-based technology. In the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, a disputed text said to channel ancient wisdom, there's mention of sound keys, specific frequencies that could unlock doors, levitate objects, or even bend time. Modern experiments with cymatics show how sound shapes matter, sand dancing into intricate patterns when exposed to certain tones. Could the Atlanteans have refined this principle, turning spoken words into tools? The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus wrote of a people west of Libya who commanded the air with utterances, making storms disperse or crops grow overnight. Though he never named Atlantis, the parallels are hard to ignore. Then there's the mystery of their downfall. Plato claimed Atlantis fell when its people lost harmony with the divine. Occult scholars interpret this as a catastrophic misuse of their power. Perhaps their spells were energy sources that spiraled out of control. The idea of a civilization obliterated by its own technology isn't science fiction. We live in the shadow of nuclear fission and climate change. Maybe Atlantis's magic was simply science we've yet to rediscover, their curses just radiation or sonic weapons gone awry. Archaeology offers tantalizing hints. Underwater ruins like the Bimini Road or the Yonaguni structures suggest advanced masonry, while the Antikythera mechanism proves ancient Greeks had clockwork tech far beyond what we imagined. If Atlantis existed, its remnants might not look like magic wands or spellbooks, but like corroded machines we can't yet decipher. The real question isn't whether Atlantean spells worked, it's whether we'd even recognize their technology if we found it. After all, as Arthur C. Clarke noted, any sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic. The vast Pacific stretches like an endless indigo desert, yet Polynesian navigators crossed it with nothing but the stars as their compass and the rhythms of ancient chants as their guide. These weren't just songs, they were living maps passed down through generations in precise oral formulas. Take the Hawaiian Kumulipo, a creation chant so meticulously structured that its 2,000 lines encode not just myths, but the rising and setting of stars, the seasonal shifts of currents, even the migratory paths of birds. To modern ears, it sounds like poetry. To a navigator steering a double-hulled canoe toward a speck of land 2,000 miles away, it was the difference between life and oblivion. What made these chants so potent? It all came down to the fusion of sound and memory. Polynesian star paths weren't memorized as dry coordinates. They were woven into stories where the hero Hina might ride the waves as the moon, or the demigod Maui snare the sun in a net of chanted syllables. The Kilo Hoku star navigators trained for decades, internalizing these rhythms until the night sky became a pulsating grid of sound. A single verse might compress the position of Orion's belt, the drift of the trade winds, and the scent of land still beyond the horizon, all in a sequence of metaphors so vivid they couldn't be forgotten. The chant wasn't just about remembering, it was about feeling the stars in your bones. The real magic lay in the way these chants bridged science and spirit. Navigators didn't just track stars, they conversed with them. The Te Puke chant of the Maori describes Sirius as Te Punga, the anchor stone of the heavens, a celestial mooring post to steady the canoe of the Milky Way. This wasn't mere symbolism. By personifying stars as ancestors or gods, the chants created a relational map, one where the sky wasn't an impersonal void but a network of familiar faces. When clouds obscured the stars, a navigator could still hear their positions through the chant's cadence, the way a musician senses the next note in a melody. Modern astronomers marvel at the precision of this knowledge. The Cape Hu-Wetu star compass, used by Maori navigators, divided the horizon into 32 houses, each corresponding to a star's rising and setting points, with accuracy rivaling European sextants. But the Polynesians went further. Their chants accounted for stellar drift over centuries, adjusting for the slow wobble of Earth's axis that gradually shifts celestial alignments. How? Because their oral traditions were living systems, constantly refined by each generation's observations. A chant composed in the 12th century might be subtly updated by the 18th, its metaphors tweaked to reflect new understandings of the sky. Was this magic or astronomy? The question itself would baffle a traditional navigator. To them, the chant's power came from its wholeness, the way it wove navigation, genealogy, and ecology into a single tapestry. The Cumulipo doesn't just map stars, it links them to the birth of coral, the flight of frigate birds, the pulse of tides. This wasn't mysticism, it was systems thinking millennia ahead of its time. When NASA scientists train astronauts to navigate by stars as a backup, they're rediscovering what Pacific Islanders knew all along, that the deepest knowledge isn't just stored in the mind, but in the body's rhythm, the voice's vibration, the stories that outlast empires. Perhaps the greatest testament to these chants' power is that they're still alive. Today, Hawaiian children learn the Cumulipo not as a relic, but as a manual for understanding their world. When a modern voyager like Nainoa Thompson of the Hokulea Canoe crew navigates without instruments from Hawaii to Tahiti, he's not reviving the past, he's proving that the stars still listen to those who know how to speak their language. The real enchantment wasn't in controlling the cosmos, but in remembering how to listen to it whisper back. High in the Himalayas, where the air thins to a sacred hush, Tibetan monks have spent centuries perfecting the art of dying, not as an end but as a passage. The Bardo Thodol, or Tibetan Book of the Dead, isn't about mourning loss. It's an instruction manual for the soul's journey through the 49-day labyrinth between death and rebirth. At its heart lies the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, 6 syllables so potent they're said to contain the entire teachings of Buddhism. Carved into prayer wheels, whispered by pilgrims, even etched onto stones piled along mountain passes, this isn't just a chant, it's a lifeline thrown across the abyss of the afterlife. To understand its power, picture the moment of death in Tibetan tradition. As the body fails, the consciousness, the Namshe, enters the bardo, a liminal space where reality dissolves into swirling lights and terrifying visions. Here, the dying are guided by lamas reciting the Bardo Thodol, their voices cutting through the chaos like ropes across a chasm. The text describes the Bardo's stages with eerie precision, the clear light of pure awareness, the emergence of wrathful and peaceful deities, the temptation to cling to illusions of a past life. Each phase has its own mantra, its own visualizations, designed to help the soul recognize these visions as projections of its own mind rather than external realities. Om Mani Padme Hum acts as an anchor throughout this journey. Broken down, each syllable resonates with a specific purpose. Om purifies pride, Ma dissolves jealousy, Nai burns desire, Pad clears ignorance, Me melts greed, and Hum transforms hatred. Together, they're a spiritual alchemy, transforming the soul's impurities into wisdom. But the mantra's true genius lies in its rhythm. chanted at the resonant frequency of the human chest cavity, around 130 Hz. It creates a vibration that Tibetan masters claim can synchronize the dying brain's theta waves, inducing a state of lucid calm even as the body shuts down. Modern studies of deathbed EEG readings show spikes in theta activity, the same waves associated with deep meditation and memory recall. Could the mantra be tuning the consciousness to navigate the bardo like a ship guided by stars? Then there's Fawa, the practice of conscious dying. Advanced practitioners train for years to master this ritual, which involves visualizing the consciousness as a red droplet at the heart, then ejecting it through the crown chakra at the moment of death. The goal: to bypass the bardo's trials entirely, achieving liberation in one decisive leap. During Fawa ceremonies, lamas often place a small stick of incense on the crown of the dying person's head. If the practice succeeds, a drop of blood or clear fluid emerges at the spot, said to be the physical sign of the consciousness's exit. Skeptics dismiss this as mere capillary action, but for Tibetans, it's proof that words and images can shape even death's mechanics. The Bardo Thodol spells aren't just about escaping rebirth, they're about mastering perception itself. One passage instructs the dying to recognize wrathful deities as the radiance of your own awareness, to greet terrifying apparitions with the joyful cry, "You are my own thought forms." This isn't passive acceptance, it's active reprogramming, a way to hack the mind's final hallucinations. Modern neuroscientists studying near-death experiences note striking parallels: the tunnel of light, the life review, the encounters with beings of light. Tibetan Buddhism's insight was to treat these not as fixed destinies, but as malleable realms where trained attention could rewrite the script. What makes these practices so revolutionary is their democratization of transcendence. Unlike Egyptian or Babylonian death spells reserved for elites, the Bardo Thodol was meant for all farmers and kings alike. Even if you died alone on a mountainside, the mantras you'd recited in life would echo in your mind, their grooves worn deep by repetition. That's why Tibetans spin prayer wheels. Each rotation imprints the mantra deeper into the subconscious, ensuring it surfaces when needed most. The lesson here isn't just about preparing for death, but about the power of language to reshape reality's very fabric. When a monk whispers Om Mani Padme Hum over a dying stranger, he's not just offering comfort. He's wielding a technology of consciousness, refined over millennia, that challenges our deepest assumptions about where the mind ends and the universe begins. And perhaps that's the ultimate spell, the realization that the boundary between life and afterlife might be just another construct, waiting to be dissolved by the right combination of sounds. The late 1800s crackled with a peculiar energy, an age of steam engines and seance rooms where science and the occult danced an uneasy waltz. While factories belched smoke across London, another kind of industry thrived in shadowed parlors, the meticulous reconstruction of ancient magic. The Theosophical Society, founded by the formidable Madame Blavatsky, claimed to channel wisdom from Tibetan Mahatmas and Egyptian adepts, stitching together Hindu mantras with Neoplatonic philosophy into a patchwork cosmology. Meanwhile, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn became the era's most influential magical fraternity, its members poets, doctors, even a future prime minister's wife, gathering to resurrect spells from crumbling grimoires and mold them into something startlingly new. At the heart of this revival lay a paradox: the more industrialized the world became, the more desperately it mined the past for enchantment. Aleister Crowley's Liber Legis, or Book of the Law, epitomized this tension. Dictated to him in Cairo in 1904 by what he claimed was a preternatural entity named Awas, its verses pulsed with a fierce, modernist energy. Every man and every woman is a star. Yet its roots stretched back to the steel of Ankh-Afna Khonsu, an ancient Egyptian artifact Crowley had seen in the Bulak Museum. The text's central injunction, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," was less a call to hedonism than a radical reimagining of ancient Egyptian math, the concept of cosmic balance. Crowley didn't just borrow old spells, he rewrote them in the ink of Nietzsche and Darwin, creating a magic for the machine age. Then there was Enochian, the so-called language of angels. Rediscovered by Elizabethan occultists John Dee and Edward Kelly, this cryptic tongue, complete with its own alphabet and syntax, was said to have been spoken before the fall of Babel. Golden Dawn adepts like Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers painstakingly reconstructed its grammar, using it to conjure celestial beings in rituals that blended Kabbalistic tree of life diagrams with Egyptian god forms. An Enochian call wasn't merely recited, it was vibrated, each syllable pitched to resonate with one of the 30 ethers or spiritual planes. When Crowley attempted the Abramelin operation, a 6-month ritual to attain knowledge of one's holy guardian angel, he used Enochian as his primary medium, treating it less like a language and more like a cryptographic key to unlock higher consciousness. Why this obsession with resurrecting old words? Partly, it was a reaction to the spiritual vacuum left by industrialization. As churches emptied and laboratories filled, these mystics sought a third path, one that honored ancient wisdom while embracing modernity's possibilities. Theosophy's fusion of Eastern and Western traditions mirrored the era's colonial exchanges, albeit with a mystical twist. The Golden Dawn's rituals, meanwhile, offered something science couldn't, a sense of personal agency in an increasingly mechanized world. To chant an Enochian invocation or inscribe a thelemic sigil was to assert that the universe still held mysteries no telescope could reveal. Yet there was also a darker impulse at work. The 19th century's fascination with Egyptology, spurred by Napoleon's campaigns and the deciphering of the Rosetta Stone, fed a hunger for lost knowledge presumed more potent than modern thought. When Golden Dawn members adopted Egyptian god forms in their rituals, they weren't just playing dress-up. They believed donning the mask of Thoth or Isis allowed them to channel those deities' power. This cultural appropriation often blurred into outright fantasy, as when Blavatsky claimed her stanzas of design were translated from a prehistoric Himalayan text no scholar has ever verified. The legacy of this revival is still with us. Modern Wicca's rituals owe debts to Golden Dawn ceremonial magic, while Crowley's Thelema birthed everything from chaos magic to psychedelic spirituality. Even the Enochian language found new life in 20th century esotericism, its angular script appearing in grimoires and heavy metal albums alike. What these 19th century seekers understood, and what still resonates today, is that spells aren't just about power. They're about meaning, the primal human need to feel connected to something older, wilder, and wiser than the world of factories and timetables. When Crowley wrote, "The word of the law is Thelema," he wasn't just reviving an ancient Greek term for will. He was offering a spell for the modern soul, one that whispered, even in an age of reason, that magic was never truly gone. It was only waiting for the right words to call it back. Imagine slathering your skin with a paste made from crushed belladonna, hemlock, and baby fat, then waking up miles from home, convinced you'd flown. This was the reality of witches' flying ointment, a hallucinogenic salve documented in medieval trial records. Recipes varied, but key ingredients always reappeared. Deadly nightshade for its delirium-inducing tropane alkaloids, henbane to blur the line between dream and flight, and aconite to accelerate the heart into a feverish rhythm. Some accounts suggest these ointments were rubbed onto broom handles not to ride them, but to absorb the mixture through sensitive membranes. The result: Vivid out-of-body experiences so intense, practitioners swore they'd attended Sabbaths in distant forests. But was this mere poisoning or a deliberate gateway to altered states? The mandrake root, with its humanoid shape, occupied an even stranger niche in spellcraft. Harvesting it required elaborate rituals, drawing 3 circles around the plant with a sword, facing west to avoid its deathly shriek, then tying it to a black dog who'd pull it free. Ancient herbals claimed the root could scream loud enough to kill, a myth likely stemming from its narcotic properties. High doses cause auditory hallucinations. Yet its real power lay in sympathetic magic. A mandrake carved into a lover's likeness and charged under Venus might bind hearts. One buried under a threshold could repel evil. The line between pharmacology and symbolism blurred entirely when Paracelsus used mandrake-based homunculi in Renaissance alchemy, insisting the roots grew from hanged men's semen. Planetary alignments added another layer. A 15th-century French grimoire prescribes harvesting vervain only when the moon kisses Jupiter, timing that modern herbalists confirm maximizes the plant's iridoid glycosides compounds with proven anti-inflammatory effects. Similarly, Egyptian Chi-Phi temple incense blended 16 ingredients like raisins, honey, and juniper, but only during the heliacal rising of Sirius. Recent gas chromatography reveals this timing captured peak terpene concentrations, making the incense's psychoactive effects more pronounced. So were these components symbolic or scientific? Both. Ancient spellcraft operated on a continuum where belief and biochemistry intertwined. When a Roman curse tablet called for the blood of a black dog, it wasn't just about color symbolism. Canine blood contains iron-based molecules that, when oxidized, create eerie magnetic effects on lead. The Babylonians' use of sulfur in exorcisms seems prescient now that we know its fumes disrupt fungal growth. Even the infamous Hand of Glory, a candle made from a murderer's severed hand, had a grim logic. Human fat burns slowly, creating long-lasting light for thieves. Perhaps the deepest insight lies in what these recipes reveal about ancient minds. They didn't separate magic from science. They sought results through whatever means worked, whether pharmacological, psychological, or poetic. A flying ointment's power wasn't just in its toxins, but in the shared belief that those toxins opened doors. The mandrake's scream existed somewhere between metaphor and measurable sound wave. And when a spell demanded venom of the moon, it might refer to Mercury's silvery flow as readily as lunar cycles. These weren't primitive mistakes. They were holistic experiments, reminding us that the most potent ingredient in any spell was always the human imagination, simmering at the intersection of observation and awe. In ancient Athens, a curse tablet etched with the words, "May he be bound," carried far more weight than one that pleaded, "Let us bind him." The difference. Voice. Greek magicians obsessed over verb forms, convinced that passive constructions amplified a spell's force by making its effects seem inevitable, less like human desire and more like divine decree. This wasn't mere superstition. It mirrored their legal rhetoric, where passive voice lent statements gravitas in court. Archaeologists have found depictions where scribes scratched out active verbs and replaced them with passives, as if editing for maximum potency. One tablet from Sicily even layers grammatical moods like incantatory strata, optative, would that he suffer, giving way to imperative, let him be crushed, before culminating in the ominous certainty of the passive perfect, he has been destroyed. Across the Channel, the Celtic bards took the opposite approach. Their spells thrived on agency, with first-person verbs that placed the speaker at the center of the action. The Lorica of St. Patrick, a protective chant, pulses with active constructions. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me. Rhyme and alliteration weren't just aesthetic choices. They were sonic glue binding the speaker's will to the universe through repetitive consonant clusters. Linguists analyzing Old Irish charms note how dental sounds /d//t/ dominate curses, perhaps mimicking teeth grinding, while sibilants /s//esh/ weave through healing spells like whispers. A 9th century hymn to Brigid uses rhyme as a locking mechanism. Brigid, golden-haired, flame golden-crowned, Bridget, Buadh, Bith Maith Ingen, where the echoing ik and n endings were believed to seal the invocation's power. The Norse took this further, treating grammar as a kind of spiritual DNA. Their Galder chants often employed a rare grammatical form called the narrative present, collapsing past, present, and future into a single verb tense. A skald might sing, "Odin carves the runes rather than carved," as if the god's act was eternally unfolding. This linguistic trick mirrored their worldview, time as a tapestry where every event existed simultaneously. Eddic poetry even suggests that reversing word order could undo spells. One saga describes a warrior escaping a curse by literally speaking his assailant's words backward, unpicking the syntactic knot strand by strand. Modern neurolinguistics offers intriguing parallels. Studies show passive voice activates different brain regions than active, the former linked to abstract processing, the latter to motor cortex engagement. Could ancient magicians have intuited this? When a Greek curse tablet declares, "His tongue is silenced," it might trigger the same neural pathways that process inevitable events like sunsets, making the curse feel unstoppable. Meanwhile, the Celtic bards, "I strike down my foes," lights up the brain's action planning centers, priming the body for the spell's physical manifestation. The most compelling evidence comes from contemporary magical practitioners. Haitian Vodou priests still distinguish between mo pi wen, my point active spells, and pi wen achter, bought points passive charms. A love potion might use direct speech, "You will burn for me," while a protective warding favors impersonal constructions like "No harm shall cross." The power lies not in the words alone, but in their architecture, the hidden girders of grammar that shape how reality bends to the will. Perhaps syntax was never just about communication. For our ancestors, it was the scaffolding of the unseen, the silent partner in every whispered incantation. Buried beneath layers of volcanic ash in Sicily, a team of archaeologists unearthed something extraordinary, not gold or weapons, but a set of fragile lead scrolls rolled tighter than a clenched fist. The Selenunt scrolls, as they're now called, date back to the 5th century BCE and bear inscriptions so minutely engraved that researchers needed micro-CT scans to reveal their secrets. What emerged were curses, dozens of them, each one a linguistic time capsule. One scroll targeted a rival merchant, binding his tongue, hands, and ledger so he could neither speak nor trade nor reckon his debts. Another, written in a mix of Greek and Phoenician, invoked underworld deities to freeze the womb of an unnamed woman. These weren't idle threats, they were precision strikes crafted by professionals who understood the legal and somatic power of words. The real revelation: many scrolls were found near courthouses and market squares, proof that ancient Sicilians treated curses as a legitimate, if shadowy, form of litigation. Meanwhile, in Iraq, artificial intelligence is breathing life into spells silenced for millennia. The Babylonian Exorcism Project employs machine learning to reconstruct fragmented incantations from over 5,000 clay tablets. Some texts, like the previously untranslated Sherpu series, reveal startling medical insights. One spell prescribes a ritual to treat what modern neurologists recognize as epilepsy, blending herbal poultices with chants to the god Marduk. The AI flagged recurring noise words previously dismissed as scribble errors, now understood as vocalizations meant to mimic seizures. Cash, cash. A linguistic mirror of convulsive brain activity. Other tablets describe lullabies for demons, rhythmic verses to pacify infant-possessing spirits, their meter matching the rocking motions mothers still use to soothe colicky babies today. The most tantalizing discoveries, though, are the gaps, the spells we know existed but haven't found. The library of Ashurbanipal held tablets referencing a crown of Anu, a celestial invocation so potent it was only recited once per generation. All we have is its aftermath, a scribe's note that the ritual required 7 priests, 7 virgins, and 7 mirrors facing the Pleiades. Then there's the legendary Book of Thoth, said to contain spells that could animate statues or part the Nile. While no complete copy survives, a demotic manuscript in Vienna references its first chapter, a love charm so effective it allegedly made Pharaoh Necho-Roman II renounce his harem. What keeps archaeologists awake isn't just what they've found, but what's still hidden. Thermal imaging suggests sealed chambers beneath the step pyramid may hold early versions of the pyramid texts, predating known copies by centuries. In Guatemala, LiDAR scans reveal unopened Maya tombs where jade plaques often inscribed with weather-controlling spells likely rest beside royalty. And in a Welsh peat bog, a Roman-era lead tablet was discovered last year, its surface etched with a single word, Defixus. Bound, the curse remains unbroken, its target unknown, its power untested. These finds do more than expand our inventory of ancient magic, they rewrite history. The Selenant scrolls expose a world where law and sorcery were two sides of the same coin. The AI-translated Babylonian texts blur the line between medicine and metaphysics. And the missing spells, they're reminders that our ancestors' voices aren't gone just waiting, coiled in the earth like dormant serpents, ready to speak again when the right hands uncover them. Modern spellcraft hasn't vanished into history books, it's simply shape-shifted, slipping into the pages of fantasy novels and the rituals of suburban backyards. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series didn't just borrow Latin for its incantations, it tapped into something deeper, echoing the way ancient priests believed words could alter reality. Wingardium Leviosa might sound like playful nonsense, but its structure mirrors real medieval levitation spells, where rhythmic vowel sounds were thought to lift objects by harmonizing with unseen energies. Even the idea of a spellbook persists in Wiccan traditions as the Book of Shadows, a personalized grimoire where modern practitioners blend Celtic invocations, herbal lore, and even quantum physics into their rituals. One neopagan's book might include a moon phase tracker beside a reprinted Babylonian fertility chant, proof that magic today isn't about purity, but about resonance. The rise of constructed magical languages like Tolkien's Elvish or the Dothraki tongue from Game of Thrones reveals our enduring hunger for words that feel enchanted. Linguists note these languages often share traits with ancient sacred scripts, guttural consonants to mimic primal forces, think Klingons, Kapla, or flowing vowels reminiscent of Vedic mantras. When fans learn to write spells in Sindarin or recite Dothraki curses, they're not just playing pretend, they're participating in a tradition as old as the Norse runemasters, who believed carving symbols could alter fate. But does this pop culture alchemy honor the past or strip it of meaning? Critics argue that turning ancient spells into hashtags, #which-talk, or fictionalizing rituals risks reducing them to aesthetics. Yet historians point out that magic has always evolved. The Greek magical papyri were already mashups of Egyptian, Jewish, and Greco-Roman traditions, an ancient remix culture. When a teen which today adapts a 17th century English charm to charge her crystals under LED lights, she's arguably following in the footsteps of those Alexandrian sorcerers who blended gods like playlist tracks. The real magic of modern adaptations lies in their accessibility. Where once spells were guarded by temple elites, apps like The Witch's Moon now send lunar phase alerts to millions, while Etsy shops sell printable grimoires with editable PDF fields. Somewhere between the Wiccaning ceremonies replacing Christian baptisms and the corporate wellness retreats offering manifestation workshops, ancient incantations have democratized. Whether this is dilution or rebirth depends on who you ask, but the fact that we're still whispering versions of these words, whether over a candlelit altar or a Kindle screen, suggests the spell was never truly broken. Just rewritten. There's a fine line between preservation and theft when it comes to resurrecting ancient spells, one that cuts straight through the heart of cultural ownership. Consider the Navajo Nation's fierce protection of their sacred chants, like the Nightway ceremony. These aren't just songs, they're living threads connecting the people to their ancestors and the land. When recordings of these chants began circulating online, tribal elders didn't just object, they mourned. To them, a spell recited by the wrong person in the wrong context isn't just ineffective, it's a spiritual violation. Their stance is clear: some knowledge isn't meant to be shared, only stewarded. Yet museums and universities argue that locking away these texts risks losing them forever. The case of the Coptic magical papyri illustrates this tension perfectly. These Egyptian Christian spells, scribbled in the margins of religious texts, were nearly lost to time until scholars pieced them together from scattered fragments. Without their work, we'd never understand how everyday people blended pagan and Christian magic in the 4th century. But here's the catch: many Coptic descendants today have no living memory of these practices. Does publishing them honor their heritage or reduce sacred traditions to academic curiosities? The commercial angle muddies things further. When a cosmetic company trademarks Yoga Sutra, or a wellness influencer monetizes Maori chants as vibration therapy, it's hard not to see echoes of colonialism, spiritual resources extracted, repackaged, and sold back to the very cultures they were taken from. The Hawaiian community's outrage over tourist luau's performing truncated versions of sacred hula dances shows how easily reverence can tip into appropriation. But what about the Nepalese shamans who now sell blessed amulets online? Some call it exploitation, others see it as adaptation, a way to keep traditions alive in a globalized world. Perhaps the most haunting question is this: who gets to decide? When German archaeologists reconstructed Babylonian exorcism spells from cuneiform tablets, they consulted modern Iraqi scholars, but the Babylonians themselves left no instructions for posterity. Meanwhile, living traditions like Haitian Vodou face relentless exoticization, their rituals stripped of context for horror movies and Halloween costumes. The difference between revival and robbery often comes down to consent. Are these spells being borrowed or taken? Science offers no easy answers, but it does provide a mirror. DNA researchers working with indigenous groups have pioneered benefit-sharing agreements, where communities control how their genetic data is used. Could similar models apply to magical texts? A Scottish clan might permit academic study of their ancestral curses but forbid their use in video games. A Kerala tantric priest could authorize recordings of his mantras, but only if they're recited at the correct lunar phase. The truth is, there's no universal rule. A Viking rune carved into a souvenir shop trinket feels crass, but that same rune painstakingly recreated by a Scandinavian historian might illuminate lost Norse beliefs. The difference lies in intent. Is the spell being treated as a commodity or a conversation? Every time we unearth an incantation, we're not just handling words, we're holding someone's prayers, someone's fears, someone's hope that the right combination of syllables could keep the darkness at bay. However we choose to use them, we owe the past this much: to listen before we speak. From the pyramids of Giza to the runestones of Scandinavia, these ancient incantations whisper a truth we've almost forgotten: that language was never just a tool for communication, but a living force, a bridge between earth and sky, between human hands and the unfathomable. The Egyptian priest chanting the Book of the Dead, the Norse runemaster carving symbols into oak, the Mayan bloodletter calling down rain with Venus in alignment, they all shared a conviction that words could bend reality itself. Science might label their beliefs as superstition, but to dismiss them entirely would miss the point. These spells weren't failures of logic, they were triumphs of imagination, humanity's first daring attempts to codify the mysteries of existence. Think of the Babylonian exorcist reciting the Maklu incantations like a lawyer arguing before the gods, or the Tibetan monk vibrating the syllables of Om Mani Padme Hum to guide a soul through the bardo. These weren't empty rituals, they were technologies of hope crafted in a world where lightning had no explanation, where illness struck without reason, where the line between life and death was a threshold, not a barrier. The spells that survived scratched onto lead, painted on temple walls, passed down through generations, are more than historical curiosities. They're mirrors reflecting our deepest yearnings, to heal, to protect, to understand. And here's the remarkable thing: they still work, not in the literal sense of summoning storms or raising the dead, but as vessels of meaning. When a modern Wiccan adapts a Celtic charm or a linguist deciphers a Greek curse tablet, they're not just preserving history. They're tapping into a current of human creativity that spans millennia. The spells endure because they speak to something universal: the awe of standing under a starry sky, the terror of facing the unknown, the stubborn belief that our voices matter, even in the vastness of time. So what's the real magic here? It's not in the ingredients, the mandrake root, the cinnabar ink, the whispered vowels, but in the act of reaching. Every incantation, no matter how strange or archaic, is a fingerprint of someone who refused to accept the world as it appeared. They dared to assert that words could shape fate, that syllables could hold back the dark. In that sense, maybe we're all spellcasters. Every time we string words together to comfort, to inspire, to defy, we're weaving a little of that old enchantment. If you could unlock one lost spell from the past, what would it be? The power to heal like a Navajo singer, to navigate by the stars like a Polynesian wayfinder. Or perhaps to write your name into eternity like the scribes of Thebes. The choice tells its own story. Drop your answer below, and remember, the most potent incantations are the ones that keep us curious. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the shadows of history, where the past never stops whispering.